sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are. Welcome and hello, everybody. This is Andrew David, Blake Newmar's partner program. Excited today to have a special guest on. If you were on a couple months ago, we had Melissa on. She is the president and CEO of Brain Train Centers and an amazing entrepreneur in her own right. She's done some amazing things. She works with Neurofeedback Therapy, something that's absolutely just so interesting, so cool, and so needed right now. And I asked her to come back and chat a little bit. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me back. Had a great time last time.
Absolutely. No, and guys, if you got questions, drop them in. I've got some kind of regular questions for you, and then, wait.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either. Where'd you go?
I'm up in the little part.
Spotlight. There we go. Okay. So, sorry. Technical difficulties. Okay. So, I wanted to ask a couple questions about, well, first, what is, just as a quick review, what is neurofeedback therapy? And then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, quick review. Neurofeedback is a brain therapy. It's technically called a brain training. We do a neuroimage, which is a QEEG. It's a recording of the brain waves, shows us what area of the brain is functioning too fast, too slow, or not much where it should be. And then from there, we give an audiovisual feedback that the brain is in charge of to change the behavior of the actual brainwave activity.
So what kind of activity, what kind of regularities or irregularities are you looking for when you're doing that mapping?
Yeah, we're looking for major, what we call dysregulations in the brain waves. So your brain should be operating faster in some areas, slower in some areas. So we're looking to see the asymmetry of the brain, the magnitude of the brainwave activity. And when those are what we call dysregulated, that's when symptoms start to arise. So neurological symptoms like ADHD, insomnia, memory loss, all those neurological.
So ADHD, not sleeping well, memory loss, you had mentioned seizures is something that...
Yeah, seizures is what it was originally created for. We realized back in the 60s that when you train a certain brain activity, seizures will decrease and sometimes even stop by retraining a specific area of the brain.
Gotcha. And, one of the reasons I kind of got excited to reach out again is because, I've got everybody, we're kind of reading and looking at Tony Robbins' new book, Life Force, and there's all sorts of different stuff in there that's, it's biohacking at, a huge level. So I want to get into, though, before we kind of talk about some of the things that individuals can do here, with this, I wanted to chat a little bit with you about like your journey as an entrepreneur. And then especially over the last, year and a half, like you've gone through from a business and personal perspective. I mean, even when I met you in November, it feels like you've kind of, advanced quite a bit. Your chart is growing exponentially, right? Yeah. What's going on from a business perspective? What's going on with you?
Yeah, well, actually, during COVID and everything, some businesses unfortunately took some big hits. Mine, I worked on doing the opposite for me. I opened 3 new offices during COVID, and I'm opening another office next month. So the reason is because I have a service that people need even more than ever for their mental health, because of everything that's happened. But also, as an entrepreneur, we all know that it just takes a lot of work and effort. And I've been a neurofeedback provider and a business owner for 9 years now. So it's definitely, I set my goals to be able to expand and reach people across the country. And so that's really just what I'm setting out to do. And the right people are coming along that I either partner with, or the opportunities where I can open up a space that I own 100% and be able to offer new communities the service. So I'm taking.
So you've got just north of, or you've got Atlanta and Vegas, and then what are all the areas that you have then, and what's the new one opening up?
Yes. So I have Atlanta. I have four in Atlanta, four offices in Atlanta, one in Las Vegas, one in San Diego, downtown San Diego. I opened up in Georgetown, Delaware in January. And next month I will be, thank you. Next month I will be in Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Hilton Head. You're just kind of picking San Diego, Hilton Head, Vegas. We're just picking spots where you can take off for a little vacation while you're doing it.
All the best spots. Now, Hilton Head, I do have a partner, and she is a BrainCore. BrainCore is the software we use. She is a provider already, but she was having trouble really growing her business, and we partnered up. So she's becoming I own Brain Train Centers. And so she's becoming a Brain Train Center. Almost, I've set my business model up kind of like a franchise, but it's not. It's more partnerships. So if people want to become part of Brain Train, they pay me.
They can join, and but you take a more active role. And so I saw this great question by a guy that I really admire, that I've actually had on here talking about relationships and stuff. So is there someone in your journey as an entrepreneur, is there someone that you've either partnered with or come across, or their influence, where you would say who's made the biggest impact in your life as far as from a business perspective, would you say?
Okay. So
or are there a couple of them?
There's a few. Of course, I have my mentor who is the creator of the neurofeedback software that I use, and I learn all the time from him and the other doctors that own it. And I actually work with them now, teaching other people how to do what I do, which is pretty amazing. But in my own personal business, I was the kind that was always like, I'm just going to grind and go and hustle and do my thing and figure it out as I go. And then about a year ago now, I came across a company, which you guys, I think, met him or had him on, but Michael Faber's Unleash You Now group. And I actually so they have a pretty cool thing. It's a movement where he is a business consulting coach, but at the same time, they provide a community to you that you could bounce things off of, but also that travel together. So we go on like mastermind trips internationally. And so when I first joined, my friend who's part of it joined, and he's like, you got to join this. And I trust him. He's a pretty good business owner. I'm like, all right, I'll join, but I'm only joining because I want to go on all the trips. And you get when you join, you get 4 trips. So I'm like, oh, Mexico, Cancun's the first trip. I've never been. I'm joining. I don't care about anything else. Yeah. I don't need a business coach. I don't need any of that. But I joined. The trip was, of course, super fun. But what has changed my business completely is the coaching that I received. And I never thought that I would ever have a business coach or understood why. And not only that, it's now created me to become a coach for people that do what I do. So I created a whole nother side business of my business. So it's completely changed my whole model of business and the way I do business and the way I market my business. So I'm very grateful to have received that coaching.
So where are you going in the next, 5-10 years? Or is there going to be, 30, 40, 50 centers around the country, or?
No, maybe. I am getting smarter though about it's not that I have partnered with anyone that hasn't worked out. All my partners are still my partners. Vegas and San Diego, I have partners, and Hilton Head's a new partner. But I am being a little more picky about who I partner with and where I open up. Because a lot of people will come and say, oh, I have a space that you could rent. And that might not just be the best idea just because they have a space to rent. Before, I'm like, let's jump on it. Let's do it. But now I'm thinking a little more logically, like, how can this benefit? Is this the great place to be? I want neurofeedback across the country. There is neurofeedback across the country. It doesn't have to be with me, but I would definitely like to see myself have a few more centers. I haven't got a number in my head yet, but I think next place will be Austin and St. Augustine, Florida.
Yeah, St. Augustine's a good spot.
Yeah.
Any interested in going into the Canadian market?
So we do have some Austin. Yeah, we do have a few providers that do what I do with the same software in Canada. I personally don't want to go into Canada because I know rules are different and all that, but I could get you information on how you can open a center because I also sell the equipment.
Well, so looking at neurofeedback therapy, so you said you've been doing it as a provider for 9 years. So what what kind of changes have you seen in the industry, during this time?
Oh, good question. So, neurofeedback is done. I don't have it, but we start with the initial assessment, which is called a QEEG. Some of you guys may have had one of these done, like for a sleep study or doing a neurological exam. We don't do it to diagnose anything, but what it is, it's a cap that goes on the head, and you have to squirt this gel, like an electro gel. What's happening is companies are coming out with what they call dry caps, which means you could put on the cap and not have to put gel in and still be able to record the brain activity, which is a big, exciting thing for the neurofeedback industry. Also, the way that the neurofeedback is done is a lot more advanced now. When it first started, you would hook up to a sensor and you'd like watch a light, like on a little box, like the old school neurofeedback. You would literally watch a box, and every time your brain goes into a certain activity, the light on the box would light up. But now we could use streaming videos, and we control the feedback of the videos and things like that. So it's a lot more evolved.
So it's not like sitting there with, they joke about torture where they're sitting them in front of the TV and their eyes are propped open and they're just watching, war and heavy metal concerts and stuff.
No, it's actually very comfortable. You could sit in the office setting. You just sit in a recliner, and we have a big TV in front of you, and your brainwaves control the feedback on the TV. And then we have home options where you do it on a laptop in the comfort of your home, and you control.
How like being able to do it in the home. Okay, before we get there, so we've talked about kind of some of the things that neurofeedback can work with. Like if I'm sitting here and I'm going, I'm in my 40s, fairly healthy.
I sleep okay. Sometimes there's some anxiety. Like, is it something where, this is something that you should check out anyway, no matter what, to kind of see if you can perform better? Or is it something where you look at it and you just go, well, I don't really have any problems, so why bother?
Right. And we think about that about our brain, right? But we still need to check how our brain is working, because if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about it like this. Let me have everyone do me a favor and everyone point to your brain. Literally point to your brain. Okay. Now everyone point to your mind. A little different, right? They're different. And so if we talk about all the time across, it's very big now, especially with mental health care or mental well-being, right? We let's work on our mindset. Let's work on our mindset. Well, guess what? Sometimes that doesn't work, because you could do as many affirmations as you want. You could do as many journals as you want. You could try to change the way you think as much as you can try, which are all great tools. You should definitely do those things. But that's working on your mind, this non-tangible, non-measurable thing. But we never talk about how we can work on our brain. And that's like saying, eat healthy, but don't exercise. You have to do both to be healthy. You have to work on your brain and your mind. And your brain is just like a muscle, like the ones you could see on your body, and you have to work it and you have to check it. Just like your computer, you have to check your computer now and then for viruses and bugs and things like that. And we need to do the same thing for our brain. So you need to get at least the assessment done of your brain as a proactive way of being healthy, even if you don't have symptoms, because you might realize that some of that mindset that has been taught to you throughout your years and growing up has affected the hardware, your brain,
right? And
it may not be functioning properly just because symptoms aren't showing up.
Yeah. So David, absolutely. It includes it includes the scan, includes analysis, includes therapies, includes protocols, includes all sorts of different things. It entails everything, encompasses all of it, and then some. And I guarantee the analysis is much more in depth than you can possibly imagine. And so I think last time, I don't know if you still have it on your computer, you had like a couple of images of what yours were, and that was the other question. So like, do you? I don't know. Is that your dog or is that somebody else?
Not my dog. My dog's being good, thankfully.
Okay. Who do you drink your own Kool-Aid is what I was going to ask. Like, do you do it on yourself? Do you do a maintenance consistently with it?
Now, I'm going to be very honest. I'm one of my worst clients, like we all are for ourselves, right? But I do it, and I should do it more. But if you don't mind, one of the people on here, Kim, is on here, and she has given me permission to share her before and after scan.
Kim, is that all right?
Yep, that's totally fine. I've been doing it since like a couple weeks after she spoke the first time, and I'm still doing it. So, yep, go ahead.
Yep. So I can share the screen if you give me permission.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to share that. So where is it? I have it pulled up. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if it's there. I might have to.
Yep, got it. You're good.
Okay, wait. Now are you seeing the brain maps one? Okay. And then I have to actually, one more thing. It's actually not going to be there. Let me reshare because it's on a different one. Stop sharing because it opens up on a different one. Hold on. Here it is. Okay. So what happens is when someone comes in initially, they do a scan and it's a 20-minute recording of 12 different areas of the brain. So what it does is it takes the electric signals, records those signals, puts them into a color picture, which is neuroimaging, just like an MRI would do, except we're not checking blood flow, we're checking electric activity. So an MRI will check blood flow of where activity in the brain is. QEEG takes electro activity and puts it into a picture form. So that's what we do before. Then we do neurofeedback, which can be done at home every day, or you come to the office a few days a week. And then we do a new QEEGs at certain steps of the training. Okay. So this was after 8 weeks of Kim training at home. You could do up to 2 times a day at home. 1 time a day is fine. 1 time every other day is even fine. Minimum is 2 times a week that you want to train. But the more you do, the faster results you get. So what happens is we then upload that second QEEG brain map to our software, and we come with a comparison report. Now, there's 2 ways the brain changed. There's normalization and reorganization. Let me quickly explain that. What that means, the best analogy I could give for it. Say you're going to paint the walls in your home. So you have to pull all the furniture away from those walls, and it's a disaster in the middle of your room, right? You can't walk around. It's just horrible. And then you go and put that first layer of paint. That's the neurofeedback training that we're doing. We're painting that first layer, and it's still a mess. And so right now we're reorganizing within that first 6 to 8 weeks, you're reorganizing the way the brain works. And then you're putting another layer by continuing the neurofeedback. And eventually you get to the second or third layer. Everything looks beautiful. It's still a mess inside. As soon as the walls dry, you move the furniture back. So that's the best way I could describe reorganization in the brain. And normalization is those coats of paint going up. So we want more normalization towards the end, but during the first part of the training, it's a lot of reorganization and prepping. Okay.
So Forrest is saying it's kind of the brain's form of feng shui.
Yes, exactly. Good example. So then what happens is we see it on a picture form. So for her, the areas that even though we trained certain areas, the whole brain's going to be affected. So certain hubs of the brain, which are these little dots, might change, even though we didn't put the sensors there. Like we might put sensors in the front and big changes happen in the back as well, because the brain communicates across these hubs. So that's the 4 areas that she saw the biggest change. It's the right side of the brain, these 4 areas, and then the left side, that one. This is the beginning. So what we want to see is green. We want to see green means normalization, regulation of the brain activity, that the brain waves are syncing. Like you may have heard the saying, the neurons that fire together wire together. So right. That's called neuroplasticity. That's called syncing of brain activity. That's called being at your peak performance, pretty much. Okay. So as we get towards normalization and syncing happens, green shows up. Okay. So see all this blue before? Even though it's not completely green, see all the green circles around the light blue, it's going towards normalization. Oops.
It's moving in that direction.
Yeah. And then where you see the blue circles around, that's that reorganization. It's just what the brain does for all of this normalization to happen. So this is the brain learning a new behavior.
So because in on the initial one there, it's showing that F4 was green and everything else was blue. So now just about all the other stuff is moving towards green, and it's because it's causing that F4 is working to normalize everything. So that's why it's firing a little bit differently.
Exactly. And it's not a permanent change. It's just a temporary change, like moving your furniture away. It's all going to get back to normal. So that's exactly what's happening. And there's a few areas that it's reorganizing somewhere else. And you can also think of it like this. We're working the brain with years and years of possible trauma, both physical and emotional, years and years of ways of thinking, ways that we're taught to think, years and years of maybe environmental toxins from our food, from our environment, things like that. So that's all going to affect the brain. So to be honest, we most likely will never get a full green map because things will always happen. Unless you're a Buddhist monk living in the mountains with no stress and all that, like you're never going to get a full green map, but you could get your brain to the point where it's organized enough that when life happens, it can process it in a healthy, positive way. Right. And I don't mean positive thinking way. It's okay to once in a while have anxiety. You're supposed to, but at the appropriate time. You should have anxiety when you're running from a lion, not from,
not just every single day. Right. And a lot of people do. A lot of people kind of struggle with just that constant feeling of anxiety. Right?
Panic and anxiety or depression and lack of motivation and things like that. So it does work emotional symptoms, but it also works cognitive. How we process information when we're doing our work, when we're writing contracts, when we're learning a new language, whatever it may be. We also want to strengthen the brain to be able to process faster and better. And so there is actual research to prove that your IQ does go up after retraining the brain. So that's pretty cool. So that
you can get smarter.
Yep. And that's kind of what it looks like as we get further in. It takes a little bit longer to explain all this. The first part is really a big part we look at. We also look at a symmetry of how the right brain versus the left brain, because you actually don't want them balanced. You want your right brain to be calmer and your left brain to be faster, because the left brain processes a lot of the logical information that we need to, and the right brain is a lot of the emotional processing. So when the emotional processing is over aroused or working too fast, then again, we see more anxiety, irritability, fight or flight state. And then vice versa, when it's too slow on the left, you deal with depression and lack of motivation and things like that. So there's a way we want it to show up. So hers is normalizing a little bit as well. So thank you, Kim, for letting me share that. But that's the cool part is that we get objective data about our brain, because sometimes, like I mentioned, like I'm totally not against journaling and mindset work, because I do that and I tell everyone to do that. But it can get frustrating because years and years of trying to do that and you're not making much progress. It's usually because the brain itself is not processing.
So have you found like the standard medicine? So it's interesting because you have psychology, right? Psychotherapists and psychologists. And they are, in a way, compared with other medicine, they're still fairly new, and people are becoming more and more okay and mainstream with, hey, you need to have some therapy, you need to go talk with someone. Neurofeedback therapy and brain core and brain training is even newer, right? Mm-hmm. And so are you getting psychologists that are working with you? Is there a pushback against it? Like, hey, you just need to sit and talk about this. All of that's woohoo science fiction stuff. Like, or how is that relationship going, do you see?
It's a little half and half. So Delaware, I'm inside of a psychologist's office. One of my offices here is in a counselor's office. One in Vegas is in a counselor's office. So it's kind of mixed. Some have heard of it through the studies. Like I took a master's in addiction counseling, and neurofeedback was taught as a form of possible treatment in a psychology setting. So that was cool and that was 4 years ago that I did my master's.
So is that something like getting into addiction recovery centers or working?
Yes.
Like, you want more of those contacts?
Yes. Yes. They're amazing. There are so many great research articles and obviously real life success stories BrainCore, which is the company I use, they are in quite a few rehab centers, and I've sold to a couple of them in Pennsylvania and out in Arizona. So we love working with the addiction, because that truly is something chemical and electric in the brain that's happening that needs to be retrained. So yeah, so it's half and half. Some have never heard of it and they're like, what the heck is this? But then they get intrigued and want to learn about it. Who is the biggest fight against us? Obviously, our medical doctors. And I don't like to say fight, because some of them have actually referred to me. So more and more are becoming more open to more natural therapies. But that's where our biggest fight is. I mean, I think every natural therapy, chiropractic, acupuncture, all that has that fight against the big pharma medical doctors because of the money, you know.
Well, yesterday we had a friend of mine on that does hormone replacement therapy and HRT, right?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that same conversation, like what, the things that they're kind of pushing back, and the stigma that people have in their minds of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you probably have people that come in and that go, okay, what are you doing to me again? And and how is me watching TV going to actually do anything?
Right. I know. And it's very strange. And it's a very weird concept to get until you actually start either experiencing it, or like what we do in our office is we give a sample session after we go over the results. We give a sample session of the therapy. And while they do the sample session, we actually explain what's going on, because the reality is it's feedback. And every day we work with feedback. Even as business owners, we request feedback, right? For our businesses to improve. So feedback, there's a saying that's the feedback is the breakfast of champions. And so the way we change is through feedback. I'm not in Pennsylvania, but I'm in Georgetown, Delaware. I don't know if you're close enough to come see me there, but I'm at Pennsylvania Rehab Center.
She doesn't work with them. So there was a question just above that about
PTSD.
Nancy's working with PTSD. How does something like this work with PTSD?
Absolutely. So PTSD is a way that the brain goes into that fight or flight state, and it shows up in your beta brain activity. So just the same as if someone were to have memory issues or whatever it may be, we're still going to do the scan the same, and we're going to see how the brain's functioning and retrain the activity to get out of that PTSD loop, pretty much is what it's in. So I actually am a co-founder of a nonprofit called Healing Our Heroes. So we work with first responders and veterans with PTSD at no charge. It's amazing results. And what's really cool, neurofeedback, I'm not against talk therapy. We actually highly recommend doing talk therapy if you do have PTSD, but combining the two, we have seen amazing results, because what's happening, the final goal of neurofeedback is to get the brain to process better and in a healthy way. Right. So when our brain is processing better, some of those emotions are still going to be there, but you are going to be able to process it in a faster way, in a healthier way, when your brain is functioning better. Yeah. So that's how it helps. Yeah.
So like a standard therapy protocol, right? Like, so you showed Kim, and Kim, thank you again for allowing us to kind of take a look underneath, in your head, as it were.
You're looking at my brain.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. So like, is a typical protocol, is it like that showed like an 8-week progress? Is it like a 4-month? Do you sit out like a year? Is it, and I know it's going to vary, right? Some people have much more work to do, but is it kind of like hey, we're going to work out like a 90-day program and then we'll reassess? Like, what does that look like?
Exactly. That's pretty much what we do. So Kim is one of my favorite clients, and I'm not just saying that because she's on here. I've actually talked about her without her knowing or me saying her name, but she gets it, right? Because after years and years of whatever kind of trauma or whatever it is that's affected your brain, it's not a quick fix. And we got to be realistic about it. Just like if you want to lose 10 pounds, you're not going to do that in 2 weeks, right? I mean, unless you do it in an unhealthy way. So if you want long lasting effects, you have to realize that you might be in it for a little bit longer than normal, but it's still going to be less time of going to a counselor for 10 years, right? So, most people come in and we set them up on about a 3 to 6 month plan, depending on what's showing up on their assessment, as well as their history, medication, age. So a child with ADHD, they think they have ADHD, most of the time they don't, but a child who has no medication and pretty healthy, like family does pretty well at eating healthy, things like that, they might just come for 3 months and be done, and great results. And then they might come maybe like in a year and do another like follow-up just for a visit or two.
To make sure that they're still going well.
Yeah, like a little tune-up, because the hormones change, things change.
Yeah.
But overall, it can be a long process where people are really committed to being like, I don't want to just get rid of symptoms. I want to get to this peak performance where I'm just like, man, I'm a business owner, I'm peak. Or I just want to get over the symptoms. And once I am, I'm good. I'm happy.
So how much do you find, because we had, that's what we were talking about yesterday, how much did hormones play into what's going on and combining that with neurofeedback?
Yeah, it's important. And I do highly recommend checking your hormones. And what happens when I do a scan, certain areas of the brain light up if it's a hormonal issue. And I refer out to people locally for that to get their hormones checked. So like it'll show up specifically in the temporal lobes on the left and right side of the brain above the ears. That's connected to your limbic system, hormones, all that. So hormones do play a role. Nutrition plays a role. And your environment plays a role. Like if you're for example, if you're in an abusive relationship and you come and want to do neurofeedback and then go back to that same thing, you're just like taking a step forward, 2 steps back. You got to change some of the environment, change your food, change the way
triggers that are around you.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not easy to get out of those, but if you can, yeah,
absolutely. No, in any situation like that, you want to put yourself in a better spot if you can. Like you're mentioning diet, like me having, treats and snacks on my desk doesn't help me with losing weight. You got to get rid of some of that, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned kids with ADHD, and that's something that's just so big right now. How often do they come in and, they're on stuff? And I'm going to insert the disclaimer that we did yesterday a few times. Like, I am not a doctor or licensed professional. I'm not giving you advice, seek your own, talk with the professionals, go chat with Melissa and her team or others in your area where you're at. I'm just interested as hell. So like, a kid coming in with autism on the spectrum, ADHD, things like that. Like how well does this work together with like, ABA therapy and, occupational and stuff like that?
Oh, wonderfully. And what's happening is we're getting kids that are in or have been in that type of therapy, and they're just now adding neurofeedback. And let's say they've been in that therapy 3 or 4 years, and they're just like slowly making progress, making a little bit here and there, add neurofeedback, get the brain processing. It's amazing. Like here's a testimonial, really cool. A child with autism in Las Vegas was coming to my partner there. Sensory is a big thing with autism, right? And they've been in occupational therapy and done a lot of speech therapy and all that. In 6 years, this child has never been able to go swimming. And just this past year, over the summer, swimming in the pool now. Like, how cool is that? Like, that's so amazing. So I highly recommend doing all those therapies that you must do, the speech therapy, occupational therapy, kids with ADHD. This is a problem. They're overdiagnosed with ADHD. And I unfortunately cannot be like, hey, you don't have ADHD. Can I share my screen one more time?
Yeah, you should still be able to.
I am. I wanted to share this picture with you guys. Let's see if it's on this one. No, hold on. Other one. Stop sharing. Oops. I want to share just really quick this picture. Oh, here it is. Hold on. These brain waves. So I could truly explain to you quickly what it means. Are you seeing this picture?
Yep.
Okay. We measure 4 major brain activities, and I'm going to specifically talk about ADHD. You see these 2 at the bottom called delta and theta, and it says deep, dreamless sleep, deep relaxation, meditation, mental imagery. Right. Someone with classic ADHD has dominant frequencies of delta and theta sleep waves happening in their brain while they're awake throughout the day. That's not normal. That's ADHD. That's true ADHD. Your brain is actually asleep functioning at a very slow level when you have ADHD. And the opposite is what people think.
So yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like you would think it'd be kind of that hyperactivity, the beta waves, like just over.
No. So you might have attention issues still. When you are in your hyperarousal state of beta, you might still have attention issues mainly because of anxiety, not because of ADHD. And let's talk about that. ADHD, these children specifically are given stimulant drugs. A stimulant stimulates the brain to go into beta. So
they have their brainwaves are when they're awake with ADHD, there's a preponderance of theta and delta. That's intimate, right? Yeah. And so they're given a stimulant drug. So like Adderall is a stimulant drug then?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So then that puts them into the beta.
Correct.
While they're awake.
Right. And so imagine a child or yourself as an adult thinking you have ADHD, taking all the tests, and of course you have all these symptoms because you can't focus, blah, 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 blah. And then they give you Adderall, but the problem is that you're in beta, so you're going to stimulate an already overstimulated brain and have more side effects, have anger issues, have irritability, and that's why you see those.
So then it's more like anxiety and other things instead of necessarily. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just
me neither.
Postulating. But you've seen some of these.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying nobody has ADHD and that it's not real. It's definitely real. We've had people come in and we see the brain is functioning at this slow level when their eyes are open and when they're awake. And that's like, okay, we need to teach the brain to stimulate itself.
Well, because I've talked with these guys about it a few times, ADHD as an adult, and especially because a lot of us we're entrepreneurs here. And so they talk about how much more prevalent ADHD as an entrepreneur is compared with the rest of the population, right? Like it's a much higher level.
You would think.
Is what they say.
But it's not. It's usually stress, over anxiety, overstimulation, and it's us not actually being able to pay attention or focus because we don't know how to time manage or focus or calm ourselves or get enough sleep. It's usually not ADHD. I'm seeing it over and over. I've done this for 9 years, and every single person, I swear, every person writes on their intake form, I have ADHD,
right.
Diagnosed or not. But attention issues is different than ADHD. So that's the difference is being able to.
I could have attention issues, but not necessarily ADHD is what.
Correct. Yes.
Because you can do, you can do these little tests online, right? Mm-hmm. And like to then set up to go get diagnosed. So like, this is like mine, right? They're like, hey, you're out of luck. Dude, I'm 23 out of 24 on the test. Like, this is you.
Of course.
Right?
I think we all would get that as entrepreneurs. But listen, those are subjective. How often do we rank ourselves a certain way? Men do it like men are like, nah, nothing's wrong. And they're like a disaster inside. And women are like, everything's wrong. And it's like, you're going to be all right. You're okay. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, there it goes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was going to say, then we go back to kind of what you were saying, where it's like, even when things are wrong, we're not going to get things taken care of. And then if things are okay, we're like, well, why check up on it? I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So I could come in, and I know I said I'd do this before, and like you gave me people here in the Orlando area, and I haven't called them yet. So totally on me. But I will. But so I could go in and do the neurofeedback therapy, and they go, okay, so yes, you're in, delta, theta during the day. And so, yes, you've got ADHD. Or they'd say, hey, dude, you're fine. You're in alpha and beta. You just don't know how to deal with your shit. Like, we gotta help you with it.
Yeah. Or your brain's processing. It might even show up your alpha wave, that one between beta and delta theta. If that's low or high, that usually coordinates to high cholesterol and stress. And that, again, is going to affect your attention because as an entrepreneur, we deal with more stress. We put ourselves into being more stressed because we're entrepreneurs. We choose this life, but that doesn't mean we have to live in stress because there are tools that we could use to deal with stress. We might not decrease the stress, but there's ways to deal with it. And
yeah, it strengthens you. Yeah, because we're going to continue to put ourselves into those situations.
Yeah, that's life.
If we can help our brain function better, if our hormones are in place, we're doing these other things. All of a sudden, we've established a foundation that's like, then you're able to deal with things 100 times better than you would be.
Exactly. Stress is never going to go away. That's life. And some stress is good. And trauma is never going to go away. We will always experience some form of trauma, and it might be a small trauma, but to someone else, that's a big trauma. I mean, the way we process that is that mindset stuff. But if we can't change our brain first to deal with the mindset stuff, because the mindset stuff can help us, but we got to get our brain functioning better first.
I know you're working with, you mentioned first responders, and so you've got trauma patients and you have kids and everybody else. I'd be super interested in like seeing almost a study of entrepreneurs, right? Like you do like some kind of, you get 100, get 1,000 entrepreneurs all across the country coming in. It's a 12-month thing. And what happens when their brain is in place? Like, well, so tell me, because this may be part of, or just throw out an idea with the event that you're doing. So you just had an event for kind of biohacking, neurofeedback, and some other people, like a smaller mastermind did, right?
Yes, I did. Well, are you talking about the Vegas one or the retreat I put on here?
The retreat that you did,
yes.
that I wasn't able to get to. That I will, you're talking about, are you still going to do that in St. Augustine later in the year?
I am. In September, I'm doing a retreat, health and wealth.
Okay, so we'll do that then. And then I've got, there's so much we got to talk about off air here, especially with some of the other stuff you're doing and some of the partners that I'm working with now. So what did you do during the mastermind that you did?
Okay, so I recently put on a health to wealth retreat. It was for entrepreneurs. I had speakers come in. It was a 2.5-day retreat. So it wasn't just about neurofeedback. I had speakers from the wealth background, like a financial advisor, thing like that. A notary that helps with getting documents set up. And then we had me and a counselor and a guy who works with drug and alcohol addiction come in, and business coach Michael Faber was a speaker. So that I'm doing 2 a year. That was my very first one. We limit it to between 20 and 25 people of entrepreneurs that want to improve their health to increase their wealth. So when you come down to it, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not taking care of your health, it's very difficult to be successful and productive and then successful, right? So when you start to lose productivity, success starts to decline. And so as we take better care of ourselves, our brain, our bodies, our mind, all of it, then we could see that business improves and we improve daily with that. So that's what the retreat was about. That's what it's going to be about in St. Augustine. I'm going to do 2 a year. So
it's kind of an all-encompassing, here's how you better yourself with all of these things in order to improve your performance in these other aspects.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's so many different things I want to talk to you about, and everybody's sitting here like they've heard me talk about some of it, but yeah, like from a research perspective, from some of your clients, like I think there's some cool stuff. So
it is. I am working with a couple entrepreneurs up in Delaware right now using a home unit. I mean, Kim, amazing entrepreneur. And she went into this maybe with different thinking of what she wanted to use it for. And it's completely making her realize there was other stuff that she needed to work on. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's, how often does that happen? Someone comes in and goes, here's my problem. And you're like, actually, look at this.
Yes, exactly. And then as you start to get better and process those things that maybe have been stuck in that subconscious electric pattern in your brain for years and years and years, is starting to regulate. It's like all these things start bubbling up. But as you deal with it, then you could start to be more productive. I think Kim might want to say something.
Yeah, I just didn't want to blurt in, but I didn't realize when you talk about trauma, people think trauma in all different ways. And I was almost died as I was 13 years old in a very bad car accident. And, I had to learn how to walk again and all that stuff. And then I didn't realize when I got to thinking about it, I was hit in the head with a softball 2 different times in my teens one from the crack in the back of the head and one coming into home plate on the side of my head. And you just don't realize the trauma your brain goes through that at a young age that it then affects your mind. Plus there's all different kinds of mental trauma stuff, but there's physical trauma as well. So I've learned about that too. It's been fascinating.
Yeah, that's so true. And we just think, oh, kids are so pliable, you know, they'll just get up and brush it off. And it's so sad to see. Like, we have a girl that just showed up yesterday in an office here in Atlanta, and she's been dealing with migraine. She's only 13, migraines like every day. And then I see her intake form, 3 concussions since the age of 2, 8, and 12 or something like that. And just like the physical trauma that you get to the head absolutely affects the brain inside of your head, because your brain is floating in liquid and it jogs the brain. And it.
So how would this help with that, you know, if you had concussions and then you're getting.
I love working with concussions. Oh my gosh, they're my favorite. So what happens is there's white matter damage. And what we're doing with neurofeedback is creating new pathways and connections and repairing the damage by creating those new connections in the brain. So
it's kind of, so you've had the neurons and the nerve cells and everything are there, but those were damaged. And so they're still trying to use those pathways. And so it's causing some kind of pain, right? So that's where the migraine comes from. And then the neurofeedback therapy comes along and rewires it in a way that it avoids those damaged areas then?
Right. Well, it strengthens those areas. It's actually been proven to create new healthy pathways from even what's there, like neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. So it actually creates new pathways that become more dominant and usable. It's not like that part of the brain's gone. It's still there. You just get strengthened, like new neural connections every day.
So then so question there, is it great for athletes in sports? Absolutely.
So I started with working with rugby players. My husband's professional rugby player, retired from the USA rugby team. And here in Atlanta, Life University is one of the best rugby teams. It's a chiropractic school of all things, but they're like #1 champions in rugby in the collegiate. So I see quite a few of them. But I've worked with #1 concussion sport is actually soccer. And people don't think about that. And the reason is because they keep hitting the ball with their head.
And then they end up hitting other people with their head when they're doing it.
Exactly.
Well, so you mentioned neuroplasticity, right? So let's say, I'm 40 and up. We've got other members here that are, maybe a couple of months older than that. So how well does it work into, those kind of our second half of our life and later years? How much, as opposed to as a kid when everything is repairing, like we said, right?
Of course. Yeah. Kids are a lot easier to work with, definitely. And they have faster results and usually better results, I guess I could say. The oldest I've worked with is 86. She had insomnia and was on depression medication for 20 something years. She came completely off her depression meds, which was super awesome.
That's fantastic.
And then I've had some, I had a man that was 74, insomnia, and it helped a little bit, but not as much as we both wanted it to. He also had to stop at 20 visits. 20 visits for a 74-year-old is not enough. But unfortunately, they put their money other places and stop. So
it's possible, but then you'd probably really have to look at a fairly intense holistic approach, like everything does that, like you can't. Whereas a kid, they could probably walk in, they have their visits, and it's really doing that work. Whereas on as you're getting a little bit older, that I'm guessing it would be where the right supplementation, hormones, diet, and everything else is going to play as big a role as.
And long term, it's going to be a lot longer term training, not years and years, but it is going to take a bit longer. It doesn't take 20 visits for a 70-year-old.
Right. Yeah. But it's possible is the whole thing. Neuroplasticity.
Yeah, it is possible. Yeah.
Is the patient's cost determined on length of time spent or per each visit?
It's per visit. Home units is you use it at home as much as you can and want to. And in office, it's per visit. So like home units are a weekly fee, and then in office are a session fee. Okay. Yeah. So different options. And if you want email me. I'll put my email in there, but email me, or you could even call our office, which is on the website that we put in there. And we could discuss that type of information. It's hard to determine. We have different packages based on what we find on the assessment.
What's needed. Yeah. After that.
The lowest we're ever going to see anyone is 30 visits, whether that's them doing it at home or in office. And that's usually a kid.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So guys, we have a few minutes left. Any other questions for Melissa? We've gone gone through all sorts of topics. I can't think. I need to.
And it doesn't hurt. I'll say that. It doesn't hurt.
It does. And it could be quite enjoyable. I mean, you get to watch your favorite show. And what's cool is on the website, if you guys are interested, on the website, there's a short video, like 2 minutes long, of me explaining the whole process. And I'm actually showing you how it's done. So there's a little girl in the
You updated your site too.
I did. I have video gallery. So it would be like, what is a QEEG and what is neurofeedback? Those two middle ones are the best two videos, and they're each about 2 minutes long. And you can watch how a QEEG is done and then how the neurofeedback's done in office. But in office is the exact same way that you do it at home. You just put the sensors on yourself. So that's my website.
Awesome. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah. Melissa. Hi, darling.
Hello. Talking.
Yeah.
Catalina.
They're where in Pennsylvania? Near Philly or Pittsburgh or where?
Well, so it's not my office. I can't remember where they're located. Hold on. I'll tell you right now. Pennsylvania. It's called Recovery Center. Now, there's other providers up there too. They are in Phoenixville. I don't know where that is.
So, but Catalina, that's a addiction recovery center that she had worked with up there. It's not one of her locations.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So my location closest to Pennsylvania is in Delaware.
Delaware.
I have Georgetown, Delaware.
Okay. Thank you for a lovely presentation today.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So Janine saying it's such a great time service with mental health issues on the rise, including substance addiction, leading to so many unnecessary deaths and tremendous strain on the healthcare system. Absolutely. I think over the course of the last couple of years, people are recognizing more and more. I mean, it's one of those things, it's amazing that you're doing this now. Like you've been doing it for years. So you're at the front lines of what's happening. Yes. You're, in a position to be able to take advantage of this stuff. I, wasn't kidding. I mean, 30, 40, 50 centers, I don't see as being a crazy stretch for you.
Thank you.
Even just the 6 months or so that I've known you now, like the growth already that you've gone through and what you're doing. So I'm excited to see it. I will for sure be reaching out because there's a couple of opportunities I want to talk to you about that I think would be very, very cool. Guys, if you want to know more, obviously Brain Training Centers Inc. I already put the link inside the Skype group. So that's there. Check it out. If you want to make an appointment, Kim's did. So you got a testimonial, rock and rolling along with proof up there, of her results already, some improvement that's going on over the last couple of months. Again, Kim, thank you for the peek inside. Yes. But Melissa, thank you for coming. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to say, there's neurofeedback providers that use the same software that I do across the country, about 300 or so providers across the country that aren't my offices, but they're colleagues of mine that I would trust to refer to. So what you could do even is if you wanted to work directly with me, but I don't have an office near you, you could go to a colleague, get an assessment done, and then you could still work with me through home units, or even if you just wanted me to look over your results, I could do that for you. So awesome. If you are interested in doing that, just email me, let me know, and I could help you find someone close to you that I trust.
Awesome. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, appreciate you being here. Everyone give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Melissa, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me again.
Clap, 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 clap.
All right. Everybody have an amazing day. Have a great weekend. Happy Good Friday to everybody that celebrates. Happy Great Friday to everybody if you don't celebrate. Have a great
Sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet.
just to go forward.
So what do you need to do?
Thank you.
How do you stand out? What you need to do is be that person who's different,
everybody.
and it's
Yes.
bigger than you think.
And make it a great day.
Rise from the ashes and
Thank
fly
you.
like the phoenixes that you are.
All right.